This is a Reader's Digest version containing many of the interesting parts of the flat Earth theory. For those who have already started seeing things with new eyes, it will be mostly a recap, but there could be a few new angles you haven't looked at. For the rest of you who are new to this, the first question is invariably, is this a joke? Because it's a joke, right? And that's where we start, because it's one of our two basic childhood facts. 1 plus 1 equals 2, and the Earth is a globe.
We are here with none other than Mark Sargent. How are you this evening, this morning with you?
I'm good, and thank you very much for having me.
Great. It's a really exciting thing for us to have you here in Israel. I talked to several people that are knowing that you're going to be in my show. They're very excited for that, and I guess that for Israel, Israeli flat earthers, Mark Sargent is the name that people are recognizing. Mainly because I think, first of all, the flat earth clues that got much people involved with flat earth, with the whole series of videos. And I will personally admit that it was my second video, the second video that I watched of flat earth. Hoping no harm done, and and besides that, I think that it's also like pretty much. I don't want to use the actual phrase of like the Bible of flat Earth, but kind of like a good map, good start to do flat Earth. And let's start talking about you first. How are you, Mark? This morning you're in Seattle, right?
Yeah, I'm in the Seattle area, just north on a rural island. It's cloudy and rainy, but you know what? It's fine. That's what I'm used to here.
Great. And tell us a little bit on how are you these days. I think we'll elaborate a little bit about Corona times, but just about your general feeling. I don't know, in your heart, in your soul.
Well, everything is kind of on hold this year in the United States. I mean, we should have had multiple gatherings and multiple conferences and stuff happening by now, the middle of May. But as you know, everything has been paused. Most industries are shut down and non-essential businesses, and nobody's traveling anywhere and nobody's really working. So it's really, really strange. But at the same time, being in the States, everybody wants to get out. Having people stay home 24 hours a day, nobody likes doing that. I mean, that's even considered a form of punishment here. We have something called house arrest, where literally you just put an ankle monitor on somebody and they stay home, and literally that's a punishment. So that's what it's like. So it's fine. I still make videos, and I still do interviews and stuff like that, but still pretty limited.
Okay, I know. We'll talk about these times and how it's related to you and to the flat Earth world in general. I actually saw you last month. You were interviewing with Robin Campbell. I think it was the last interview that I saw of you. Also, before the Corona crisis started, I saw you in all kinds of television shows in Britain, and I see that you keep doing your normal thing with advocating for flat Earth and speaking about flat Earth.
Yeah, I'm still doing it. All the way up until January, I was doing in interviews with different networks. And doing the one over in UK, that was a lot of fun with Holly and Philip on one of the main BBC channels. And when anyone calls, I try to make myself available whenever possible.
Great. I actually got a chance to speak to you really briefly when you were in the conference, in the international conference in Dallas. For about 2 minutes or so, we were I was on the Paul on the Plane show, and you popped up. And over there, I kind of told you that we got lots of interesting things going on over here in Israel. Pretty much of a big awakening going on. We actually planned to do a conference here in Israel, which was scheduled to be in April, and you see how that went on, of course. And And besides that, I think that we have pretty much of a large community over here in Israel. which are getting away by the moment and by the numbers, and I think that this all last period of like 2 or 3 months with the Corona crisis, I think that it got people into a little bit more involvement, like with the truth in general. Okay, not with only the Corona crisis, but anyway, I think that. People are eager right now once this crisis is kind of like about to be over. I don't know if in the United States, but in Israel you kind of like feel it that it's about to be over. I think that people are now eager to get back to talk about flat Earth and talk about those things.
Yeah.
How did that affected you? If, don't tell me about the crisis itself, but about the contents that you are involved with during this time. Were they changed? Were they not?
Oh yeah, yeah, it definitely did. I mean, we were being drowned out
Mm-hmm.
here, even to the point when I was doing podcasts. Over the last few months, the topic has more or less shifted because what's happening in the world has been louder than flat Earth. Although I will say the flip side of that is that there are a lot more people because they're home and on the internet. There's a lot more people getting into conspiracies that normally they wouldn't. And so we're still spreading, but we've saturated the market so much that it's tough to bring. I don't even know how many new people we can bring in because I think everybody knows at this point the concept of flat Earth. But yeah, definitely has affected my content.
Hmm. Yeah, over here as well. Actually, funny story. We were like in a rally the other day. A few guys of us. It was a rally versus freedom against all the quarantine and against G5 and all kinds of other topics. And
Hmm.
there was a guy, flat earth, that was standing by me, and he was telling me, he was looking at the crowd, and he was telling me, "Oh God damn it! I wish that we could all like finish with this Corona thing and continue on talking about flat Earth. It will be the most enjoyable thing for me right now. It's so like over talked, I think."
Yeah, I agree. Over here, because we don't have any new, I mean, the stuff, the television shows and the movies that were produced last year and the very beginning of this year, those are being released, but we have no new television shows, really. And, the stuff that has to be produced really, really quickly. And because of that, we're only seeing the news. The only new stuff is the major mainstream media news channels,
Hmm.
and it's disheartening. You're absolutely right. And flat Earth is not a negative thing. It's a message of hope. And in my opinion, it still outshines even what's on the news right now.
Hmm. Yeah, I think so too. And this is one of the reasons that I thought that getting to you over here right in this point, it was a really good timing because I really think that I myself was also like involved with Corona crisis shows, and I actually did like a radio. I kind of like switched my news show into a radio show, and in order not to talk about the Corona crisis, and then I switched it back to talk about it. But anyways, it was kind of like a feeling for me that getting back to talk about flat Earth, or maybe like I call it flat Earth like the smaller lie, okay, the smaller and
Yeah.
the globe lie, like the smaller lie, okay, which
Hmm.
is kind of like attached to a really big lie, okay, and
Hmm.
this lie, this bigger lie, this is what we actually witnessed, I think, in the last few months, where all the forces of that we are kind of like introduced to already from the flat Earth, from the globe lie story that we have.
Hmm.
All those forces kind of like gather together to create something which is much more I know, effective on our life, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, I do. The globe. What I try to tell people is the globe lie is something that was conjured. Well, first off, you got to remember that we didn't create the globe lie.
Mm-hmm.
All we did was keep it a secret. Keep it a secret for a while. That what I've been preaching to people for a long time is even our best and brightest didn't figure this thing out until 1960, and so all they've been really doing is keeping the secret. But they've been doing a heck of a job at it. People, for the 99% of people for the longest time didn't even think about it. didn't even think twice. And so again, I'm just humbled to be a part of the awakening that has been happening for the last 5 years. It's been wonderful to see, and every day I get emails from people saying how they've woken up and how they'll never look at the world the same way again.
Okay, good. And just briefly, share with us what kind of content did you do over the time of the Corona? With you kind of like told me that you did shows, but with what kind of like side did you advocate in this thing?
Um,
Briefly.
what have I been doing, since the virus? I've been pushing if the flat Earth that I've been doing has been kind of on the back of other people. So the one that I've really, really been focusing on and giving out to as many people as I can is the black swan argument, which is the oil rig visual tests, the photography tests that have been going off the coast of California. And I've been showing them to as many skeptics as possible, which is, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, the oil rig at 6 miles and 9 miles respectively from the beach.
Yeah.
And I try to tell people, I was like, look, it doesn't matter, even if you're going to nitpick, how high the person is off the beach or how exactly far away they are at 6 miles and 9 miles, are they 7 and 10, are they so on and so on. It doesn't really matter because the horizon is behind the oil rigs. And that I love. It's like there is nothing you can do to explain why the horizon is behind the oil rigs, because the whole point of your argument is that the oil rigs are being cut off by the horizon. Well, they can't be cut off and there's a horizon behind them simultaneously. It doesn't work like that. There would be huge distortions if that was the case, and they're as clear as can be. So that's the big thing that I've been promoting is the visual stuff. When I can. I mean, we've got so much content that's already out there that I've been really, really, pushing the specific videos and content to the skeptics and saying, look, we've got you where we want you. I mean, you can deny it all you want, but there's nothing you can do at this point to turn this around in your favor. It was what I predicted a couple of years ago, which is, look, if science doesn't come up with a way of explaining the world that is easier to understand than us, they're going to lose by attrition, which is what's been happening. People have just been getting into this more and more because we're showing them simple arguments which anybody can go and see for themselves. And science gives them equations, and that's why they will lose in the end.
Yeah, we actually had a similar experiment going on in Israel back in November. A group of us Israeli flat earthers we did in the Dead Sea. In the Dead Sea, we did. It was kind of like a try because there was bad weather in that day. But a few months afterwards, we did like. In the Sea of Galilee, there was a group of people that went on 9 kilometers from coast to coast, and they put the camera on the water line, and they were able to get the glimpse of a mirror which was 9 kilometers away, which was really amazing, and it was a big checkmate for the community over here to be able to produce this experiment. And I think that I will send you some links to check it out and try to translate it for you.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, it was really fascinating one. And actually, the things that you said before, it was over the last week or so, since I knew that I'm going to interview you, I checked out. Of course, the Flat Earth Clues in the last days, and I checked out the Behind the Curve movie that was published, I think, 2 years ago, right, in 2018. And this is actually the scene that you're opening the Behind the Curve movie, when you are telling people about the Seattle that you're not supposed to see it over there.
Right.
I want to ask you a question that a lot of people popped up. What do you think about this movie? Did you think they did a good service for the Flat Earth community? Because this is kind of like the window, whatever, for everybody who's not a flat earther to know what Flat Earth is, especially in Israel. People here pretty much have Netflix, most of the people over here. What do you think about this movie?
Well, yeah, what I said initially when this movie came out was, I said that anybody that's into Flat Earth is going to hate it. and everybody else is going to think it's very, very interesting. And that's pretty much what happened. I had the pleasure of seeing it before it was released to the general public. So I went to the initial premiere, the film festival in Toronto and other festivals, and we did very, very well in that we were in, oh good Lord, pushing 30 festivals in I don't know how many countries, a lot. And when I sat down with the audience and watched it with them without letting them know who I was, I found that because it went back and forth between flat earth and anti-flat earth positions, it was received better. Because it wasn't, to use a drug reference, it wasn't pure flat earth. It was cut. So it was, flat earth for a little while and then a scientist, then flat earth for a little while and a psychiatrist, a flat earth for a little while and an astronaut. And so by the end, people got to see both sides of the argument. Because remember, it's a very, very heavy topic, and most of the people that saw it in the theater or saw it on Netflix had no idea what flat earth was at all. Mm-hmm. So by the time they got to the end of the movie, which was 100 minutes, they had gotten so much flat earth, so they basically was just boom, 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 flat earth, not a flat earth, flat earth, not flat earth, mm-hmm. to where at the end they were questioning it themselves. They were starting to do their own research. And so, I have mixed feelings about it. Did it generate a huge amount of interest for the community? Yeah, it did. Yeah. Huge amount. I mean, my email load doubled literally within weeks after it coming out on Netflix. And Netflix wasn't just the only place it was out. It was also out on Amazon and iTunes, and you could get it anywhere. But Netflix was the big one, because if you're under 30, at least in the United States, you have Netflix. Would I have changed anything about it? Yeah, I would have. Mm-hmm. Sure. I but not as much as you might think. Yeah. So there's other people in Flat Earth that said, I would have removed the astronaut. I would have removed everybody that said a dissenting word against Flat Earth. And I said, well, that's not fair. I go,
very important question. Do you think there were any kind of manipulation by the editing of this movie?
Oh God, yes.
In a way? Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, there was so much editing that was done and so much that was left out. Remember, I was with these guys off and on for 7 months, mm-hmm. and they had to whittle it down to 100 minutes. And what we didn't know was how much they hated the topic by the time they got to the end of it. Meaning they, and we didn't know this until we watched the iTunes version, because the iTunes version is the only one with a director's commentary that you could run in the background. And in fact, most of the director's commentary was very standard and very boring, how they shot this or what they wanted to do here. But when they got to the point where that 12-year-old kid was asking me questions when I was up on stage at the conference, they all just jumped in and said, oh yeah, this is when we had to take the position against Flat Earth. It was supposed to be very, very objective. It was supposed to be a human interest piece, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it because they thought we were indoctrinating kids, and I thought that was really interesting. So in the editing, oh good Lord, yeah, they butchered us. I mean, everything from the biggest editing thing that they did was the Jaren experiment.
At the end, right?
Yeah, at the end, they had to come out. Remember, this is a very limited budget production. This was not Netflix produced it, but only in the sense that they distributed it and helped get it finished at the end. But all the main shooting was done by a very small film team. And a lot of people don't know that they had to fly up to see Jaren's experiment up in the San Francisco area twice. The first time he melted the condenser on the laser because he left it on too long. You can't keep, if a laser is powerful enough, you can't just keep it on mm-hmm. forever. It's even after 10 minutes, it's going to melt. And but they didn't talk about that. But the second one was at the end, which was the ending of the movie. Yeah. It made it seem like, oh, okay, they raised the laser up and now they could see it, which meant, oh, it's got to be curved, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it was not the case. Now, was it all? That was all. It was partially editing, and it was also partially Jaren's fault, mm-hmm. because Jaren, we didn't know this until months later, Jaren didn't actually go out to the site during the daytime and actually look to see if the terrain was even flat, perfectly flat.
I think that I saw a movie of him that afterwards there was a tree in the middle or something like that.
Oh yeah, there was a tree there as well, mm-hmm. but I mean, Jaren never did a dry run. It's one of the first rules in shooting stuff in film. It's like you never do the first... Well, you never do... They call it a dry run for a reason, meaning you don't go live the first time and record it. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did. I mean, and I only knew this because he went out months later to the site. He went on Google Earth and said, oh, he decided to drive out there again during the daytime, and it wasn't flat. But there were also other little things. The only part they asked me about if they could do, and I didn't think they'd change it unless I really objected, was the green button section with me at the Kennedy Space Center, where I'm hitting the screen and the touch panel, and they show me hitting the screen like I'm trying to get this particular thing to work at at the NASA display, and it wouldn't work. And then I walk away, and the camera zooms in on this giant green button that's sitting right next to the chair. Well, they completely deleted out the part where I hit the green button. I mean, you literally cannot miss the green button. It's the only thing next to your chair. You sit in it and you hit it. And of course I hit it, but they came up with this great little idea. It's like, oh, let's just delete that part where Mark's hitting the green button, and we'll make him look like he missed the obvious, which was he missed the obvious green button. And the audience laughed, but they asked me during the premiere, is it okay if we took this shot at you? It's like, fine, it's clever, but people don't understand the power of editing.
Yeah.
I mean, you can literally change every aspect of a movie in editing. You do the raw footage, and just by adding stuff or shooting it out of sequence or deleting it. Another quick example, which wasn't the documentary, but it was a National Geographic piece where we shot out in California and at the Salton Sea, where they set up this big experiment with balloons at 10 miles out. And the experiment got completely botched. It was their experiment where they were hoping that they could raise the balloons and we would see them come up over the curvature of the Earth. Well, we could see the balloons on the beach. And they didn't like that. It was like, oh, that's going to be a conflict. So they completely wiped it out. Everything that was about that balloon experiment, you do not see in the segment. It's like it never existed. Well, we had cameras that were live streaming that entire morning, including Jaronism, and Rob Skiba was there, and Patricia, and we all watched the whole thing. And that balloon footage was absolutely edited out because they could not use it because it showed that it was flat.
I think that also, in that experiment, also you had problems with, I think, humidity or kind of like tough visual conditions over there.
Oh, yeah, the visual conditions were terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible. I mean, I got there at the crack of dawn. I mean, the sun, it was 5 a.m. I think we got up at like 3:30 to get there. 5 a.m., it was perfect. Like, for example, you could see across the lake, and you could see the buildings that were on the beach, literally, 7, 8, 10 miles away with their lights. You could absolutely see them. It's like, these guys should be shooting right now. And they delayed and they delayed and they delayed to where the sun came up, and then it got really, really warm. And I was commenting every chance I could. I said, look, see those mountains off in the distance? They're disappearing. They're actually becoming a mirage every 30 minutes. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And you're not shooting it. And they wouldn't. One more real quick thing. This is from Behind the Curve, which was when we were at the Kennedy Space Center. You know full well, that first image by, I think it was Robert Simmons, the blue marble shot where he said, it's Photoshop because it has to be, right?
It has to be.
A lot of people don't know that image is sitting at NASA at the Kennedy Space Center. It's literally sitting there on the wall. It doesn't say who did it or anything, but it's very, very recognizable. It was the the first background shot of the iPhone, right? And we're telling this, Patricia and I are sitting next to the director, we're shooting this, and we're sitting there, look, this is a completely photoshopped image. You can check it out online. The guys, they made it, recorded it, and said exactly how he built it. In fact, I even showed, look, here's the cloning tool that was used in the Southern Hemisphere, right? And they're shooting it, and I'm going, why? And it was never used, never even glanced at in the documentary. Every little piece of evidence that hinted at a flat Earth was removed from that documentary. They would not show it. They wouldn't talk about any of the other laser experiments. They wouldn't talk about any other long distance photography. Because they wanted to make a human interest piece, but at the same time, the scientists they talked to were trying to give evidence against the flat Earth. So they never, at no given point, did they ever give any pro-flat Earth evidence. And so, yeah, there you go. Power of editing.
Yeah, I think behind the editing, I think it's more like media's agenda, okay, in all sorts of places. And
Yeah.
I think that every flat earther kind of like encountered this. I don't want to say conflict. I don't think it's conflict. Kind of like a discovery somewhere that the media has been lying to him for years and years. My story begins with when I started to learn media about 20 years ago. I went to media school and got a BA in media, and kind of like. I didn't felt like in the frame over there in the media school. I always felt that I should do something which is out of the mainstream media, all the things that they're demanding over there. I wanted to do something which is alternative on my own or whatever. And after finishing the media school, I didn't want to be involved with the media anymore. I got like a big hunch, a bad hunch with them.
Yeah.
And was interested a lot in science and history, and I saw everything that I was fed from National Geographic and History Channel for a long time. And the day that I actually saw your movies and the first one was of Davidson, of Ruby Davidson, from Celebrate Truth. And after I saw these movies, I kind of like got a big crush to everything that I believe, because I told myself, just a second, like for 15 years I watched those movies, and I, as a guy that learned media, couldn't identify that I was watching cartoons. It was so like I was actually insulted first. The first feeling that I got was insulted. The second feeling was that I felt like a sucker, that I sacrificed all this time to watch those cartoons. And the third feeling that I got was maybe anger about this media, about the word that they're trying to sell us. And I think that it pops up in all sorts of places, like you said, in Netflix, and also, like, of course, in the news, and now in all its might in the coronavirus crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so tough for mainstream media to be objective at all right now. Objective journalism has been, as you know, dead for a long time. And it's mostly because of the parent companies. When people don't understand that whatever television channel you're watching, or newspaper or radio station, they're owned by another company. And that company is owned by another company, in which, finally, there's a huge conglomerate at the top. And they have their own views on things, and they can dictate the policy any way they want. I mean, going all the way. I mean, this goes in the United States, goes all the way back to the days of when we only had newspapers. And it didn't take long for the very, very wealthy to figure out that if a newspaper is saying bad things about you as a wealthy person, what's the easiest solution to that? Well, you just buy the newspaper. And then you can write any stories you want. I mean, the famous movie, one of the best movie, cinematographer dreams of all time, also known as Citizen Kane, that was the premise of it, which was, he created media because he took it over. He didn't have to vie for, he didn't have to do things to get the media to pay attention to him, because he owned it physically.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that right now with between the virus and the election on this side. I mean, the media is having a field day. It's never been more popular than it's been in the last 3 months.
Yeah, of course. This is, I guess, I think that always when people ask me who are the ones in charge of this spreading this virus, or so I always tell them, you should try to observe who is enjoying this thing, okay?
Yeah,
who's like getting now like ratings, who's like now in the news and can tell what he wants, and who's not wearing any mask on prime time, okay, and that's keeping social distancing in front of everybody. These are the ones in charge of that.
The media, and we call people sheep for a reason, and I can't get too mad at the sheep, because if all the media is on the same page, if every single television channel is telling you the same thing, what do you think they're going to believe? We there's an old saying from the Truman Show, which is we believe the world that is presented to us, and that not just the physical world, but every aspect of it. So when the media, especially CNN, they're the big champions over here, they say every hour, every day, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. That's going to work for a while, and it's going to be quite effective. However, in our case, unfortunately, you can say be afraid. It's something I called recently. I said it's the no zombie scenario. And bear with me for a second. So if the media all of a sudden started coming running stories saying, "Hey, there's zombies. There's zombies here, there's zombies there, there's zombies in your neck of the woods. You should be really, really afraid." People would be afraid, be like, "Holy smokes, there's zombies." They'll lock the doors and shut the shades and be like, "Oh my God, we got to be afraid of the zombies." The problem is that that can only go on for so long before it wears off, because you got to show people zombies. And if all of a sudden, 3 days later or 3 weeks or a month later, it's like, "Hey, have you seen a zombie?" "No, I haven't seen a zombie." Well, then what do you think is going to happen? It's like, well, maybe we should go outside. And that's what's been happening here. There have not been that, you can pump up the numbers all you want as far as, saying, "Oh, these people have died." But the problem is, and I know it's been a long time since the Spanish flu, unless you have Spanish flu type numbers, no one's going to care. And by that I mean, I'll give you a quick example. The Spanish flu killed at least 1 to 2%. We'll round down to 1% of the world's population. 1%. That means that 1 out of every 100 people died. That's a lot of people. I mean, if it hit today, that would be 78 million people in the world. That's a huge amount of number. Have 78 million people died? No. That's 1%. 10% of that is 7.8 million. 10% of that is 780,000. Half of that is where we are. So we're at half of 10% of 10% of 1%. And nobody's, again, you would know people. It'd be like one of your family members would be dead. The guy that works down at the garage, he's dead. Your dental hygienist, she's dead. And so on and so on. You would know dead people. Or the short version, I don't want to drag this out. The short version is look on your phone. I challenge this to anybody that's listening, anybody you talk to, because I've been doing it to a lot of people and nobody said yes. I said, look at your phone. Is anyone on your contact list dead because of this virus? No, nobody is. And I have yet to find somebody that is. And even if you did, if it was a miracle that you did find somebody that said, "Oh yeah, this cousin Fred, he died." It's like, really, was he struck down or did he have lung cancer? Did he have severe diabetes? Did he have a heart condition? Did he have this and that? It's no one's ever healthy and dies. It's always something that's tied to it. So anyway, I could go on forever about that.
Yeah, of course. Now, I just want to mention about the zombies. I'm totally agreeing with you because I said to people, you have two choices now. You can either believe the media or the politicians that are telling you about this virus, and you can do these options. You have the second option of closing down the television, go outside and use your senses and decide for yourself if there is any virus or not, because I'm not seeing it anywhere. And all I see is like people with masks, and people with masks are usually, people with masks, people with piece of cloth on their head. They're not indicating about anything.
The masks don't do, and let me be blunt here, the masks don't do anything. And if you think I'm kidding, go out with a mask on and stand next to a guy who smokes. Can you smell the smoke? If you can, the mask isn't doing anything. So why are you wearing it? You're only wearing it because the TV told you to. It's just driving me nuts.
I love your experiment proposals that you have over here, Mark. They are so efficient. I think that we'll go for a short break right now, and we'll get back. We'll ask some more interesting question for Mark Sargent. Stay up. Hello guys, we are back here on ESH News, and tonight, as you saw, we have a very, very special guest, Mr. Mark Sargent himself. And we talked a lot in the first part about Mark Sargent and Flat Earth and Corona times and things that you talk about with Mark Sargent. How do you feel in this show so far, Mark?
I couldn't be happier.
Couldn't be happier. Okay, good. It's a good point. I want to talk to you a little bit about more different things that we usually talk about because, first of all, we are here in Israel. We got, like, as I told you before, we got a big awakening over here with Flat Earth, with the community over here. We got, of course, WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups, and lots of activity that we kind of like initiated by ourselves in the last year at least.
Yeah.
I think that we are all like inspired, and we're trying to inspire other countries, which is Flat Earth is a kind of like low on like a low level, to try to make it like publicized thing in our country, try to promote it in their country, all kinds of like small European countries, all kinds of like other parts of the world. What do you have to suggest to those countries or to us, okay, on how to promote the flat Earth concept or like a theory or whatever inside our country?
Promoting, and I would say this about any country, not necessarily your country, is always gauge your audience accordingly. Meaning, don't just, and I know people when they first get into Flat Earth, they get so excited and so enthusiastic that the first thing they want to do is just rush out to their friends and sit them down and say, you know what, I'm into Flat Earth. You should be too. That's the worst thing.
Familiar, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. When we have holidays over here, they're the worst time of the year for me because you have these big family gatherings, and when flat earthers go in, they think, because they're so confident and they're so enthusiastic, it's like what the biggest drawback of flat earthers is they forget the journey that took them to get there. To get your mind from point A to point B, it may have taken them 2 weeks, it may have taken them a month, and then they forget that. And so then they come back later and they say, well, I should be able to convince my family members and friends in maybe an hour or two. It's like, no. You're never going to be able to do that. No, because it didn't happen with you. But It's like, okay. So what you do is you come at them sideways. The advice I give is to go at them and hit them softly and come at them and say, hey, I saw this really weird stuff on the internet the other day. What do you think about it? And start out with something small like this, like the moon missions, for example, and say, do you believe the Americans went to the moon? If you're talking outside the country. And if they say, oh, yes, the Americans absolutely went to the moon, well, then you're probably going to have to slow down, because that's what you're going to have to go after first, because that's what most people look at. They say, oh, the moon missions and all the space programs are absolutely real. You have to hit that first before you drag them into flat earth. You try to hit them with flat earth first, it's not going to work. You have to go after the space agencies first and put doubt in the space agencies. And that's fairly easy to do, but you can't skip that step, which a lot of people will try. Seriously, I mean, I've had people say, if they sit down with friends and family, it's like, oh yeah, I want to talk to you about flat earth. You might as well be telling them that you have come out of the closet, that you're gay, and you're a drug addict, and you've switched religions from, let's say, Judaism to Catholicism. You might as well have given all those three things. People are going to look at you and think that you should be in a mental institution. Don't do that. Come at them softly, and everybody's different.
I got a very good 2 examples about doing it softly with my family. Actually, I did the same thing that you mentioned. I immediately rushed to my family and I told them about flat Earth. All of them thought that I was nuts, of course. But I told them, okay, I got like my parents over there. What they do all day, they watch television. So what I will do a television show and I'm gonna anchor it, and then they will have to see it, right? They will have to get interested in it, right? Yeah, wrong. Okay, my mother told me that I'm dressing really nicely and I spoke very nicely and everything, but she doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about. That was nice. That was an unsuccessful try. But I came to my brother. I told him, okay, what my brother likes. My brother likes football, okay, soccer, whatever he calls it. He likes
That's fine. No, you can call it football. I'm down with that. You're fine.
He likes football, so I kind of like connected this guy that he got a very successful podcast about football, and I suggested him to do a show about flat Earth. He's a really good guy and a really famous anchorman in Israel, and he actually liked the idea and brought me to the show, and and I dragged my brother over there to this show because I know that he loved this show, and I kind of like told him, okay, now you have to sit down in this show and smile because I brought you to this show, and you're gonna hear flat Earth conversation for an hour now, and you're gonna be happy about it. And this is how you're doing it, I guess, softly in some way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well,
yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say was, you were saying that a lot of people, if they see it on television, it gets a lot more credibility, which is why, again, the documentary did so well because it was a mainstream Netflix documentary, and it popped up. It was trending for months on Netflix. It was always like in the top 3 of the Netflix recommendations for documentaries. And so it's like, well, if it's on Netflix and they recommend it, it already has Netflix's stamp of approval. Therefore, it's got mainstream stamp of approval. It's safe for me to watch it. It's not going to damage my brain if I watch it. And so they do. And that helped a lot. A huge amount of credibility was given to us because of that documentary. Even though it did not paint us in the best of lights, it introduced the topic to people, to where all of a sudden people that, once the documentary was over, they went online, or they were going, or on their phones while they were on. It's like, this isn't a real thing. And this is absolutely true in that the first 20 or 30 minutes of that documentary, most people that have never seen the topic before don't even think it's real. Mm-hmm. They're watching the documentary going, oh, this is one of those parody things. This is one of those pieces of docufiction. And I mean, I sat in the theater where all of a sudden after 20, 30 minutes, all of a sudden people are like whispering to each other. It's like, there's something really scary on the internet and we don't know about it. What is this thing? And in fact, there was one producer, you probably heard this story. There was a producer out in Los Angeles that didn't know anything about it, and he was shown this movie. Mm-hmm. And he at the end, he goes, wow. He goes, what sort of budget? He goes, I thought this was a small time film. What sort of budget did you have for this thing? And they go, why? He goes, all those actors you hired, they played it absolutely straight. And then he absolutely believed. And they go, no, man, those weren't actors. None of them were actors. He's going, and then he just completely, he goes, wait, that conference was real? and it's like, yeah, it was real. It's like, wow. And that really blows people away because it's such a foreign concept. It's one thing when like one person comes to you and says that, here's this really unusual concept, but it's a whole nother thing when you see a conference of people. In fact, when we were at the conference back in 2017, what news media does is they send out recon. They send out like a one-person probe to go into it and see if it's real. You hear stories like, oh yeah, this is happening. So they'll send a person out, and he looks, the people look around and be like, is anything happening or is something really big happening? And I saw these guys. They came up to me and they said, holy smokes. He goes, and then they immediately got on the phones and said, you got to send a full team out there. It wasn't that the media showed up the first day. It said they showed up the second day. The first day was all the media just wondering if what we were doing was really actually happening. And yeah, it was. So.
Great. I want to switch on to another topic about, I mentioned earlier Israel, and I think that in our country, at least in my personal story, I got like a hunch. You said at the beginning of Behind the Curve, you think that Flat Earth found you. You didn't found Flat Earth. And for that, I took that sentence and kind of like tried to put it on me. And I think that it's not a coincidence over here that that I kind of like born in the country of Israel, in the country of the Bible, in country of lots of like spiritual and historical junctions that were around in this piece of land. And I think that it wasn't like a coincidence, and then you find out that once you get into conspiracies or whatever, there's not such thing as a coincidence. And I thought, and kind of like the journey that I went on with this flat Earth was because that I felt that there is something special that was in this trio of like me, flat Earth, and the land of Israel, which is kind of like connected together.
Right.
Have you ever like give a thought about it, about this land? Have you ever visited over here?
The closest I got was Egypt.
Oh.
when I was over there some years ago. I was doing a tour, and because I really wanted to see the pyramids for myself. My mother's been to Jerusalem twice, doing some stuff. In fact, I was toying with the idea this year, of course, until the travel bans came. When it
How
came,
is your but time out? What? How's your mother? I kind of like forgot to ask. I kind of like feel I know her personally
she's
after the movie.
no, she's hanging in there.
Yeah. Okay.
She's her health isn't great, but she's hanging in there.
Yeah.
The When it came to Israel, the only other things of note was, of course, the Israel conference, which I would have loved to have attended this year, if it would have happened. But the only thing that stuck out to me regarding Israel was that the moon probe of last year.
Yeah.
And I watched this thing, and it just came out of nowhere for me. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, Israel's going to land a probe on the moon. I'm going, what are you talking about? It's like they can't land. In fact, if you go to Wiki even now, I don't think it's changed. You can look up. But the thing that really stuck out to me was if you look up countries with launch capabilities, there's only 6 of them on it, and Israel is not on that 6.
No,
So
we did
how
it
in the
from the
world?
US. We did it from the like NASA bus, whatever.
Yeah. So and then of course, and everyone, Jeranism was the one that followed it the closest, where he goes, I predict they'll get just a few grainy shots and then it'll crash. And sure enough, a few grainy shots, and then 15 minutes or 15 feet supposedly before it landed, it malfunctioned, and that was it. And everyone got up and they sung a song and clapped and left the control room, and that was the end of the broadcast. I was going, what? It's like nobody even questioned
Yeah,
it.
I will tell you my personal perspective from this event.
Yeah,
When I was already like a year, something like that, a year flat earther when they started
yeah,
promoted this spacecraft Bereshit, and I think that and during this time already my friends and family knew that I was a flat earther, and then they told me, "Oh, you see now Israel, our country is gonna bring up we got a really big pride in our country of everything that it does. So this country will do now travel to the moon, and you will see that everything is that you said is not true." And I said, okay, yeah, we'll see, we'll wait and see. And then there was this whole time that they kind of like getting ready for this launch, and a huge campaign in Israel about this with all kinds of like celebrities, hooked celebrities, that kind of like with the media agenda already, that you kind of like know them from every broadcast that on television. And
yeah,
they're doing like promotion with that, and during in schools they're doing a really big promotion towards that. And finally the day arrived, and they launched it, okay, from the NASA base, whatever. They launched it, and of course they saw that the missiles are going like woo, like that. And then
yeah,
people are saying, "Hey, you see, we launched we did it. We launched the spacecraft right now." I said, "What are you looking at right now?" Anyway, it went out to space. It actually said that this spacecraft was doing like several rotations through, like around the Earth to gain like
yeah,
momentum or something like that, and then to be captured with the moon gravity, right? Something like I didn't like understood what it actually means, whatever. They said that it's going to
yeah,
be traveling in about 36,000 kilometers per hour, which
yeah,
doesn't really make any sense. But anyway, I went to the day. Oh, and there was the big thing with the selfie from space. Did you got that one?
yeah, yeah. I saw it.
With the string thing. You saw that?
Yeah,
The string, yeah, it was actually published first on the Prime Minister's Facebook page. Okay, this picture of like the Earth, like from space, with a string hanging from the ceiling or something, like holding this ball.
yeah,
And then we waited to the actual landing, and it was, and actually told myself, Nir, come on, you've been a year with this flat Earth shit. Come on, if Israel will land on the moon now, and they will get a few good shots, I promise to myself, yeah, I will stop being a flat earther, and I will get back to being a globie, whatever. This is what
yeah,
I promised myself. But once the big moment arrived, it was such an anticlimax. It was just
Oh yeah.
it was just nothing. Okay, it was nothing that was actually made the decision for me anyway to another place.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment I got really pissed off. Of course, the prime minister came over to the speakers to the microphone and said, "Oh, it crashed, but it was a great accomplishment. We arrived to the moon, so it's a great accomplishment. We'll do it the second time. Yeah, let's sing all the national anthem and finish up this fiasco over here." And I think that the moment that this broadcast kind of like ended, this is the moment that I told to myself that I'm going to be much more involved with flat Earth and to spreading this thing, because this lie that was just in front of my face was just shameful, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And well, don't forget, China supposedly has had a rover. A rover. They actually landed and supposedly put a rover on the moon. They've had it there for at least 3-4 years. And are they ever going to broadcast anything from the moon? No. Well, why aren't they in the Sea of Tranquility? Why didn't they knock over the American flag just accidentally? It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, and about our country in particular, I personally think, this is usually my point of view, that as for the physical proofs, okay, of flat Earth, with all the experiments, all the things that we are doing, there's like tons of it, and you can talk about it endless, okay. I personally think that the real clues of flat Earth are not are more like in the spiritual sense, okay, are more like in the way that that God kind of like tried to create this world for us in certain intention, okay, which I'm not talking about the physical one, but the physical one is actually projecting on the spiritual one, and I'm saying that with his message of us bringing us this flat Earth, he kind of like told us that we should all be equal under one God, and of course not listening to other people, avoiding all kinds of like social pyramids, and judging by our senses, because our senses are divine, and this is the way we are capturing the world. So I think that I see that you're kind of like agreeing with this statement, but in any ways, did you ever thought about researching all kinds of like clues inside the state of Israel, or do you have that anything can be really unique within here to kind of like I don't know, proof flat Earth or whatever?
I don't know if there's anything specific to Israel. Most countries you fall into the same boat, and that is just long distance photography. That's the first thing. Shooting over a body of water that you have access to both sides. That's usually the best proof that there is. And if you've got anything like that, great, fantastic. That's the other thing that Israel might have an advantage, and that's most of the Middle East is a drier climate. And that is, if you have a really, really dry climate, the atmospheric effects don't seem to be as severe. Some of the sun experiments that were done, say, like in Afghanistan, some of the photography there was a lot more definitive than it was in humid climates. So, it's just a shot in the dark. But that's the only thing really for Israel that might help.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that Israel, as you said, in the geographical sense or science sense, it doesn't. Okay, it doesn't have any particular things. But as I mentioned, I think that in the spiritual sense, to research all kind of like holy artifacts, which are like physical and spiritual artifacts, which are still located over here in Israel, can give you a big indication on the bigger story, okay, that they have over here. And I would take this opportunity, of course, to invite you over here to Israel whenever you can, and we'll do this research together.
And you're absolutely right about the spiritual side, in that Israel is a very spiritual country, more so than a lot of different countries, and that is an aspect of flat Earth that has really brought people in, which is, okay, do the texts, in your case, through Judaism, do they speak to, a flat and stationary or an enclosed world? And I think it does. I think they do. And we've seen that over here with Christianity, same sort of thing. And So could people in Israel wake up faster than other countries? Sure, sure. I could see that through the spiritual side of things. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Okay, good. And with that aspect, what do you have like, let's say after this Corona crisis, what do you have like anticipations or like wishes for the entire international flat Earth community? Where do you think that it can go? Where do you think that it can develop?
Well, I'm still hoping for what I hoped for back in 2016, which was the 100th monkey effect, which is, and if anyone doesn't know what the 100th monkey effect, it's when a species, when they hit some sort of threshold, the entire species gets upgraded or gets a new message or updated simultaneously. Which is what happened with some monkeys out in some islands of Japan after World War II. Do I think human beings can fall into that? Yeah, you bet I do. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Human beings have some herd mentality, and we do have some sheep mentality. Sometimes it works in our detriment, but I think it also can work for the good of things. I mean, we belong to a peer pressure society. If you see enough you see it in schools, for example. If enough kids are wearing, Levi's 501 blue jeans, eventually they're all going to be wearing them because everyone wants to be like the cool kids. But it can also flip on the other side, and that is if all of a sudden 2 out of 3 people are wearing masks on the street, they're wearing masks at some point because they're worried that they're not going to fit in with the crowd. Everyone wants to fit in. Everybody wants to be part of a group. So, do I think that flat Earth will eventually reach that tipping point? Yeah, I do, because of what our numbers were just going through the roof back in 2018 until they literally tore down the scoreboard on YouTube. They literally removed search results,
Yeah.
the numbers.
Actually, now that like today, I kind of like searched Mark Sargent flat Earth clues, and you're
Yeah,
getting like number like on YouTube, and you're getting like number, I don't know, 20, 30 on the list. You get like the actual movies. All the first
yeah.
20s or so are all kind of like debunks, pre-programmed whatever by the institution.
They were promoting me for a while, and at the end of 2018, they stopped promoting. They promoted YouTube or promoted Flat Earth much, much less, 60% less. We knew this because our monetization went down across the board by about 60%. And people say, oh, they're censoring us. It's like, well, first off, YouTube is a private company. They can do whatever they want. It's no different than a restaurant. A restaurant technically doesn't even have to serve you food. They can kick you out for any reason. But the bigger thing is that YouTube promoted us nonstop for 3 years. Just promoted and promoted. I think we saturated the market to where they didn't have to promote us anymore. And so I think that eventually my hope is that we reach a tipping point to where more people believe in it or are open to it than not. And we've seen that even starting back 3 years ago with the 18 to 24-year-olds in the U.gov survey that were skewing a full third against the globe. That's an incredible number. I mean, that's what caught the eyes of National Geographic and other science groups, where they said, well, there must be something wrong. The number can't be that high. And then I showed a gamer video where he did a straw poll, and this was kids under the age of 18, or at least under the age of 21, and it was scoring 53% in our favor. And so as you get younger, it gets stronger and stronger. So how long before we hit that tipping point? How long before we hit that threshold? In fact, I think we're really, really close as it was. But the only thing that has distracted people recently over the last 4 months, going on 5 months now, is the virus.
Yeah, yeah. And what about you personally? Did you think about any kind of like other topics that you are prefer to research? Let's say more like within the flat Earth world. We actually got a very nice flat Earth over here that asked me to ask you. He's very interested in alchemy and all kinds of like energy sources and things like that. Is any kind of like other fields of which is interesting you lately?
Anyone that knows me knows that I've got an opinion on just about every conspiracy you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I literally have an opinion. You name a conspiracy, I can give you a short version of it. But For me, everything below flat Earth is still second tier. So, do I like looking into different aspects of 9/11 or Pearl Harbor or JFK or the Boston bombing and stuff like that? Sure, but in the second book I wrote, I like finding conspiracies that I didn't even know were conspiracies. So, like, the perfect example was the one that I still will claim exclusive rights to, which is the Panama Canal. Most people don't even look at that as a conspiracy. I'm going, look, 6,000 people died making that thing. And they died deliberately. They knew full well they were going to kill that many people, and it was done for both military and economic reasons. They did it for what they thought the greater good was. France tried, and they couldn't pull it off. They lost too many people. They lost 21,000 people. And so, do I like looking at other conspiracies? I will look at just about anything nowadays because of flat Earth. Flat Earth has opened my mind to just about everything you can think of. How much research I put into it, it really varies. There's only so much time in the day. Like one of my favorites, I like revisiting old conspiracies with a new wrinkle. Like for sure, like you've heard of the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
A perfect example. Everybody's heard of the freaking Loch Ness Monster. The short version is, are there dinosaurs swimming around the lakes of England, right?
Yeah.
Or Scotland, and you say, well, no, they can't be. It's like, why not? And it's like, well, because they've been dead for at least 100 million years.
If you believe it.
And then and it's like, then I show them, what if you believe in carbon dating, and then I show them the coelacanth fish, which was caught some decades ago. Well, the coelacanth fish was supposedly dead for 70 million years. And every single scientist in the world would have bet everything that was in their wallet that fish was dead for 75 million years. And then they caught one off of Africa. South Africa, and then Mozambique and Madagascar. And now National Geographic has this whole special where they actually swam with these damn things. They're all over the coast of Africa. So what happened? Why did every scientist get it absolutely wrong? How did they screw up so badly? And that's because science doesn't like revisiting their old proofs. One scientist says, well, dead 70 million years, puts their stamp on it. Every other scientist says, well, he's credible, sounds good to me. And so then I come back and I ask you again. I say, are there any dinosaurs swimming around Loch Ness? And you say no. And I go, and they say, why? And it's like, well, they've been dead 100 million years. It's like, yeah, but that fish wasn't. That fish is so hot. Why would you absolutely say you're going to bet everything? Would you bet your life on it? Would you bet your life that my point is that if that fish was just a little more elusive, if it dodged the nets and was caught today, there would still be scientists saying, oh, that was photoshopped. Oh, that's obviously a fake. And they had a really, really hard time when we caught that fish. They didn't know what to do. They had to rebuild their entire theory around it. They had to make that an exception to the rule. And it's like, why can't Loch Ness be an exception? So, sorry, short answer is all conspiracies for me are still on the table, which I love. I mean, I'll look at just about any of them. Unless it's a really cool conspiracy, though, like, something that you could make a movie out of, I'm not going to spend that much time on it. So.
Okay, and tell me, Mark, just a question out of the blue. What about the biggest conspiracy of them all related to you? Why is everybody telling me everything about you? An actor, whatever. I kind before I got into this show, this is like people telling me, oh, it's great that you got Mark Sargent, but you know what he is, right?
Yeah, he's an actor. I am obviously the greatest secret agent of all time.
Probably.
That came out of. Well, there's two reasons why that happens. One is if you get to be popular enough in media and social media, you're always going to be looked at more suspiciously. Plain and simple. Yeah. There's nothing you can do to avoid it. In fact, we had an old saying over in the States, and that is never trust anyone over the age of 30. Right? But the problem is everybody eventually turns 30. So then what happens? All of a sudden you can't be trusted. The same thing with YouTube. I think it was never trust anyone over 20,000 subs. And it's like, well, yeah, but what if you get over 20,000 subs? I mean, I've talked to people. It's like, well, they're nervous because they're like 15,000 subs. And they know when they hit about 20,000, people are going to start looking at them funny. And it's like, what? It happens. If you make content that resonates, people will watch you. But the big thing with my stuff was mostly Eric Dubay. I hate to say it. If you want me to pin it on one guy, that's who it was. Eric Dubay reached out to me back in 2015 through his people, through some of his people that followed him, and they said, "Hey, we don't like what you're doing in interviews. Eric wants you to change some things." And I didn't even know who he was. I'm going, why would I? Who are you? Why would I change anything in the interviews? And it's basically, if you don't do this, you're going to be discredited. And Eric just started spreading immediately. It's like, oh, Mark's obviously an agent. He was telling people back in 2015 when I didn't really even have subs. I mean, maybe I had 10,000 at the time. And he was saying, oh yeah, Mark's an agent. Mark's an agent. And then probably the worst case scenario happened where ODD, you've heard of him,
Yeah.
he got on board with Eric, and he same thing. Oh yeah, Mark's an agent. Neither of them had ever met me, and that was the rumor that was being spread, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. It wouldn't have, I didn't even try. What's the point?
I'll give my
So,
perspective on this. I do think that regardless of the fact that nobody gave any facts or proofs or whatever, just just words.
yeah.
Despite that, I don't think that anyone that will invest so much time and money and efforts and will get involved in this particular subject with his all his heart and soul,
Yeah.
can be something can be something which is not real, we can be something.
Exactly. After 5 years, when am I going to reveal my great plan to turn Flat Earth sideways? I have done hundreds of interviews at this point, and every interview I give the same answers, and every interview, I give it everything I have, and I've done the documentary. I've written 2 books on the subject. I did the commercial down in Australia. I have my own podcast. It goes on, and at no point did I ever all of a sudden say, "Oh yeah, no one should look into flat Earth because flat Earth is stupid." No one point did I ever say, "Oh, I never believed in it ever in the first place." No, I mean, and I still get emails from people that say, "Oh," I don't get that actually many emails from flat earthers accusing me of being an agent. That's weird. That only happens in the comment section. I get trolls that will come at me and say, "Oh, I don't think you really believe in this," and interviewers that'll say, "I don't think you really believe in this," but that's because they're in denial. They can't wrap their head around it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Either I am, again, the greatest secret agent ever. I mean, Mossad, amateurs, nothing. They got nothing on me. Or I'm the real deal.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think I'm the real deal. Look, I put my name, my address, my phone number, my entire backstory. You can look it up online. I mean, my high school is not that far from here, where I grew up. And I challenge anybody. And that's, by the way, that's the hypocritical part that drives me insane. And that is, I get accused of being an agent from people that are completely anonymous. That's the part that drives me nuts. It's like you don't use your real name on YouTube. You use aliases. You don't put any personal information out there at all. Literally, you could drive here right now. And I've had people show up on my door, not because they wanted to accuse me. It's like, oh yeah, it's Mark Sargent. It's like, yeah, nice to meet
Check
you.
out.
Oh, so,
You mentioned Mossad. I think it's also overrated totally. Misconception totally. It's not that big as people in the other countries think it is.
I mean, you got to use something, and the CIA, the KGB, Interpol, Mossad, and what was the thing they use out of Japan or China? I can't even remember. But yeah, Mossad's used in a lot of movies now. It's very, very hip.
I'm just trying to trigger them through this show to come over to my doorstep.
There you go. We should, well, if they're following it, we should say it a few more times. Mossad. There you go.
Great. Mark Sargent, I think that we are approaching to the end of this interview. I want to thank you a lot for joining us here on ESH News. It's been a really great pleasure. I enjoyed every second of this interview.
Thank you.
Great, and hopefully,
yeah. Oh no, I would say no. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm glad that again you're addressing the topic and bringing it to light in the great place of Israel.
Great, and I'm sure that all our viewers over here in Israel and all the other countries that ESH News is approaching to will happy to see this interview. Take care, Mark. It's been a pleasure once again, I will say it. And you are well invited to ESH News in the future to be hosting with us, of course.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.